of this session are to strengthen knowledge of sand and dust storms source methodologies, to discuss successful mitigation strategies, and to discuss appropriate solutions for Central Asia and opportunities for regional collaboration projects. We will be having some introductions from Ms. Louise Baker from the UNCCD, from Ludmila Kentko from CAREC. We will also have presentations from Professor Ali Bulurani from the University of Tehran and Professor Claudio Zucca, followed by some discussions and contributions from the floor. It's a pleasure to have some guests from FAO and ICARDIA here. And first, let me start by introducing the advisor to the Ministry of Ecology for the Republic of Uzbekistan, Ms. Suna Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Good afternoon. I know we all expected a minister here to do a welcoming speech, but unfortunately he was called into another meeting, and that's why I will be delivering his message to you. I know we all like to see the high level, the ministers and so on during the events, and usually these are the ones which are packed with people. But I think what we often overlook during these special sessions is the focus on practicalities and also, really listening to the experts who are the scientists. And that's why I really wouldn't want to focus on the amount of people here today, but rather focus on the quality of discussions that we will be having during the session. And I think the sand and dust storms is so critically important for all 5 Central Asian countries, that whatever we share today could really or should really become a tangible solution that each of us in our respective countries could implement. But now, if you will allow, I will just read the welcoming speech of the Minister of Ecology, Environmental Protection and Climate Change of Uzbekistan, His Excellency Aziz Abduhakimov. Good afternoon, dear participants and delegates. It is a pleasure to meet you all at the Central Asian Regional Pavilion, where we discuss the important topic of sand and dust storms in Central Asia. 2 weeks ago, in historic Samarkand, Uzbekistan, hosted the 21st session of the Committee for the Review of the Implementation of the UNCCD Convention, CRIC21. CRIC21 session brought together over 700 participants from 130 member states, with close engagement of international and local scientists, NGOs, and civil society. Certainly, I'm happy to say that CRIC21 session was a great success. Louise, you are here to testify that. Okay. During the session, we discussed various topics on land degradation, restoration, and we managed to establish the CRIC21 Green Park. Additionally, we were fortunate to have the personal engagement of Executive Secretary Honorable Ibrahim Tao. During CRIC21, the government of Uzbekistan proposed to develop Samarkand Declaration on sand and dust storms. I look forward to continuing our work with the UNCCD team on this declaration, which could become one of the outcomes at the upcoming UNCCD COP28 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Dear friends, for Uzbekistan, the problem of sand and dust storms is a matter of urgency, given the increasing frequency and intensity. Since most of the country's territory consists of steppes and deserts, including the Kızılkum Desert and the Aralkum Desert, which is the bed of the dried up Aral Sea, almost the entire territory of Uzbekistan is subject to the negative influence of sand and dust storms. These dust storms are becoming more frequent and extended across the country, with adverse effects on livelihoods, health, and environment. Certain land use practices in agricultural and pastoral sectors, water use, soil management, and deforestation can all be driving causes of sand and dust storms. To combat sand and dust storms, we need integrated actions at all levels. We must rethink our relationship with the land, enforce stringent measures, adopt a scientific approach, enhance regional cooperation, and streamline financing. There are several key factors I want to highlight when it comes to combating sand and dust storms. Firstly, we must recognize the importance of preserving the health of our land and work towards this goal. Secondly, we need political will and institutional readiness to enforce stringent measures to combat these storms. I'm pleased to inform you that on December 1st, His Excellency President Mirziyoyev personally attended the COP28 World Climate Action Summit. This was a truly historic milestone and clear indication of the importance and priority of climate and environmental agenda in Uzbekistan. Recognizing the significance of science, knowledge, and innovation, the President has welcomed close cooperation to set up an international climate technology expo hub in Muinak, Karakalpakstan. In addition, leading scholars and experts invited to participate in the climate scientific residence. Now, this is a really flagship initiative that we're setting up to unite all scientists around the pressing issues of climate, which will be organized at the Green University in Tashkent. Fourthly, we need regional cooperation to address the transboundary nature of sand and dust storms, which is the reason that we have come together today for this session. Identifying and monitoring dust sources, as well as implementing a system of sharing that information, is a regional priority. This data is essential for early warning systems, as well as for the creation and implementation of mitigation strategies. In conclusion, I would like to reaffirm that Uzbekistan is committed to dialogue and practical actions in combating sand and dust storms. I would like to personally thank Louise and representatives of other valuable organizations, including UNCCD, FAO, ICARDA, for being present here today. And Louise, we discussed so much about sand and dust storms in Samarkand. I really do hope that today we can come from discussions to practical measures. And as we spoke in Samarkand, maybe we can even come up with potential solutions that can be piloted in the near time. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Park, for that. And next up, we'll have a short introduction and overview of UNCCD's work from Ms. Louise Baker. Thank you.
Causing chaos as ever. Hello, hi everybody. I'm Louise Baker. I'm the Managing Director of the Global Mechanism at UNCCD. And we had an absolutely spectacular trip to Uzbekistan recently. And it was a real eye-opener, I think. I had a very fabulous volunteer who came to work with me. And she actually was the first one who showed me the video of the sand and dust storms in the south of Uzbekistan when I first got there, and told me all about it. It's something that really impacts people's lives. It really impacts the way that people, I guess, see their environment, and it represents a sort of almost existential threat. When those sandstorms come in, and they come in at size, they are really intimidating, and they define your environment. So I think putting this sand and dust storms agenda really at the heart of your climate and environment solutions agenda will have a massive impact on how people in the region look at their environment and look at their space. At UNCCD, we have a particular focus in this area. We are the convention, the sister convention to climate change, that looks at land and water. And what we're really seeing is that as land degradation accelerates, as incidents of drought accelerate, more and more land is in that zone that is exposed to sand and dust storms. The sand blows, and the topsoil gets blown away, and the situation gets worse. But we're also, I think, an organization that doesn't want to just think in terms of problems. I think for us, there are things that we can do about sand and dust storms that begin to be very practical. And that's where I'm hoping that we hit the direction of travel that you want us to look at. We're focusing as a convention on something called land degradation neutrality, and Baron is in the audience. He'll tell me I'm going to get this wrong in a minute, but still, it's the combination of conservation, sustainable management, and restoration of the land. And from our side, it's conservation of land that isn't degraded. It's sustainable management of the grasslands and the steppes so that the pressure on sand and dust storms doesn't get bigger. and it's restoration in this context, particularly of the source areas. So identifying where the source areas are and going after them so that you restore the land, you ensure that wherever possible, the impacts of sand and dust storm are mitigated. Now, there is a problem, of course, because the sources are not always in the same country as where the impacts are felt. This is a cross-border phenomenon. This is why this is an exciting initiative. This is an initiative where 5 Central Asian republics have said, okay, this is a common problem. This is an issue we all feel and we all are impacted by. And I hope part of that discussion as well is we all have some skin in the game about the responsibility to put it right, the responsibility to restore the land and to get the land into a healthy shape. And so that's kind of where we are now. I was super excited by the level of enthusiasm from the Central Asian states to do something together. I was very excited by the sort of political engagement that said, yeah, actually, this is something we can work on. And so the next stage is the level of ambition that we have for the region, that you have for the region. It's identifying where those source areas are. It's thinking about some of the solutions that we can apply in that area, whether they're technical solutions, whether it's policy change or regulation. And we know that there are success stories, actually. We know that there are already examples being rolled out in the region that work. How do we take those to scale? And can we collectively look at doing something across the region that would really have a transformational impact? A transformation against sand and dust storms, a transformation in favor of the environment and in favor of climate resilience. So that's my introduction. I have great hopes and great ambitions for this session today. I hope that we are going to get some really wonderful results from that. But because I'm not the technical person and I've got some clever people in the audience with me, I'm sure, who are going to give me some really nice background and some really good inputs. Can I turn over, I think it's to Sultan Bayof? Is he here? No? We've changed that, have we? We're going in a different order. Okay, we're going in a different order. My apologies. Sorry, that's actually Ludmila, in fact. Could I ask Ludmila to come and give us some context for SDS in the region and some examples of successful mitigation projects so that we've really got an idea about what we're talking about. Thank you so much.
Сейчас, минуточку. Уважаемые участники, здравствуйте. Меня слышно, да? Все нормально. Translation is here. Yes, yes. Окей, моя презентация. Я дам большую общую картинку со статистикой, с некоторой, и расскажу о той инициативе, которая сейчас двигается, но очень коротко. Итак, большие цифры по Центральной Азии, что в Центральной Азии 80% территории покрыто пустынями, степями в сочетании с изменением климата и продолжительными засухами. Они являются естественными источниками песчаных и пыльных бурь. Неустойчивое ирригационное земледелие, выпас скота, добыча полезных ископаемых и другая самая разная деятельность, и строительная в том числе, это антропогенный источник для пыли, соли, пыльных бурь. Высыхание Аральского моря привело к тому, что 5,5 миллионов гектар новой соленой пустыни появилось в регионе, и эта соленая пустыня является еще источником 100 миллионов тонн пыли и ядовитой соли. Пыльные бури происходят 90 дней в году, это информация гидрометов. Соли из региона Аральского моря не обнаруживаются вдоль побережья Антарктиды и на ледниках Гренландии, в норвежских лесах и других регионах земного шара. В Центральной Азии, сейчас, секундочку, 6,5 миллионов человек, 9% населения всей Центральной Азии, они проживают в районах, где происходят пыльные бури и засухи. 85 миллионов гектаров подвержены средней и высокой степени риска возникновения пыльных бурь. Бури, соли, токсичные вещества, они вызывают респираторные заболевания для глаз, и особенно, конечно же, это воздействие вредно для детей, для женщин, для людей взрослого возраста. Негативное воздействие на ледники. Сегодня тоже много говорили о таяниях ледников. Вот один из источников не только повышения общей температуры, но еще и наши бури. Итак, в связи с ростом частоты пыльных бурь и негативного их экономического воздействия странам необходимы. Вот эта фотография 2021 года, вы видите, что да, моя презентация, она оснащена еще и фотографиями. Сейчас. Вот эта фотография 23 год, Таджикистан. Вот там фотография 21 год, Казахстан. Буря. Это съемки, аэросъемки пустыня Аральская. Море, и выброс как раз пошел этих песчаных бурь. Фотография Самарканд, Узбекистан, 21 год. Итак, рост частоты бурь, негативное экономическое воздействие. Что нужно странам Центральной Азии? Эти нужды были определены через процесс на национальном и региональном уровне, когда шел анализ и выбросов, и воздействия. Почитать больше можно увидеть о процессе, вернее так, это результат, это стратегии, которые были разработаны. Вот эти книги, они размещены там, есть также онлайн. И, конечно же, есть экспертные отчеты с более детальной, глубокой информацией о статистике, о том, что происходит в каждой стране, потом на региональном уровне. Итак, что было выявлено как common для всех стран, необходимое в Центральной Азии? Что необходимы специализированные научные исследования источников и процессов пыли-солевых бурь. Необходимо картирование территорий по степени воздействия процессов на пылесолевые бури. Детальные исследования негативных последствий для здоровья людей и экономики. Регулярный мониторинг процессов возникновения и прохождения этих бурь. Полностью действующие нужны национальные системы прогнозирования солепылевых бурь, раннего предупреждения, мониторинга. Несомненно, необходимо обмен данными между странами, источниками солепылевых бурь и странами, куда они достигают, эти бури достигают, для того, чтобы просто страны лучше координированы были и готовы к усилению смягчений, усилению своих усилий по смягчению бурь. Итак, я показала стратегию, которая была разработана через консультативный процесс во всех 5 странах, и потом на региональном уровне были объединены проблемы, проанализированы и сформулированы действия, которые необходимы для того, чтобы содействовать, бороться с последствиями, адаптироваться к ситуации и снижать эти риски. Итак, есть стратегия региональная среднесрочная по управлению песчаными и пыльными бурями в Центральной Азии на период 2021-2030, то есть практически 10 лет. И в этой стратегии ключевыми приоритетами являются приоритет номер 1 – это расширение знаний о солепылевых бурях, что поможет снизить связанные риски, повысить осведомленность и двигать необходимые меры по смягчению последствий. Конечно же, в этом направлении также подразумевается продвижение интегрированных и синергетических мер по передаче знаний и технологий. В области номер 2 смягчение воздействия антропогенных источников пылесолевых бурь направлено на усиление экологических и социально-экономических причин, понимание воздействия на экономику как в источнике, так и в пункте назначения. И область номер 3 – это региональное сотрудничество, необходимо совместные действия для того, чтобы именно как основу подготовить и реализовать для решения экологических проблем путем скоординированных и совместных действий, особенно в бассейне Аральского моря. Ближайшее следующее действие в этом направлении по второй области приоритетной – это как раз вместе продумывать совместные действия. В марте планируется региональный воркшоп при поддержке КБ ООН по продвижению трансграничного сотрудничества по солепылевым бурям. И цель, конечно же, этого воркшопа – это объединить усилия участников, представителей стран, представителей партнеров по развитию, представителей финансовых партнеров, банки, девелопмент-банки, для того, чтобы проговорить, обсудить и подготовить концепцию регионального сотрудничества, вот идеи регионального сотрудничества по направлению солепылевые бури и опустынивания. Все, спасибо. Все приглашаетесь, конечно, на семинар. Информация будет на сайте регионального экологического центра. Информация до семинара, будет обязательно Zoom, гибридный формат, поэтому подключайтесь. Все, спасибо.
Thank you so much, Ludmila. That was really, really helpful to give us some great background. As you can see, there's a lot going on. And yes, please, that's details to come. I think the workshop is taking shape, right, at the moment. Yeah. So very good. Details to come on the workshop. We look forward to that. Now, can I ask Professor Ali Davishi Bularani?
Yeah.
Online? Yeah, he's online?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Can
Hold
you hear
on.
me?
We can hear you. We can't see you yet. Hold on.
Okay. Just, I cannot turn on the video.
Okay, we can see me, which is a bit intimidating.
Maybe someone else control it.
Hold on. Give us a second. Small technical hiccup.
But I can see you very well.
You can see us. Okay, very
Yes,
good.
of course. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think.
Okay. You already have my presentation.
We've got the presentation. The presentation's up. We can't see you. We're going to
I
see
don't
you
know
as well.
why. I try to turn on the video, but I cannot.
All right, you can get, so what they're suggesting is we perhaps give the presentation, but then we need to figure out how to turn on the camera at the end because we'd like to say hello, yeah? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay, so we're going to put the presentation up, hopefully. I would hate to be the technical people in meetings like this, wouldn't you? The pressure.
Yeah. Okay, maybe I can start without video, yeah? Because I can share my screen as well, if it is possible.
I don't know, can we, There you go. We have got your screen.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Shall I start?
Please go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, I'm going to talk about source mapping. Let us start with this question. What is source mapping? Based on my knowledge and based on the review that I already have done, accurately answering the following question is the foundation of comprehensive data source mapping. You know, first of all, we need to think about where is the data source? The first and very elementary question. For answering that question, we go to data source identification and mapping procedure. When does it active? It's very important issue also for knowing about data sources, about their dust calendar, in which season, in which time they are active. And another question is going back to the impact area. We have to know about the impact area of any dust source, because as mentioned by some others, dust sources are different with different impacts. And finally, how any source emit dust is also very important and must be considered for using a land surface and atmospheric modeling. Please go to the next slide. Okay, actually, I cannot see well, but yeah, here. Actually, based on the, okay, thank you, it's okay, it's okay. Actually, based on the literature, there are about 5 procedures to data source mapping, to data source identification. The first goes back to the remote sensing imagery and other techniques and methods, for example, using the weather and air quality stations, simulation methods like numerical modeling, emission equations, and finally field investigation and laboratory analysis. But I just want to a little bit more focus in remote sensing because it's a very, very popular all over the world. Remote sensing imagery for dust source can be in visual interpretation of satellite imagery, using some sort of dust indices, and finally environmental modeling using GIS and remote sensing. Please go to the next slide. Based on the literature, the dust sources can be divided into 2 groups: anthropogenic sources and natural sources. I'm well aware of this fact that some of these mentioned sources have overlap with each other, you know, but in a general classification, land degradation, abundant agriculture fields, dried waterbed like dried riverbed, etc., construction in cities and mines are anthropogenic sources of dust. At the same time, natural or hydrologic, desert and volcanoes. The most important things is knowing which source is following which procedure to be activated. Please go to the next slide. Here, based on our newest unpublished paper, we have done a literature review about the paper that specifically has been about dust source mapping, about 487 papers we find from 1977 till last month. And as you can see, the number of publication, peer review publication is getting higher and higher. Please go to the next slide. And here we show the geographical distribution of published paper. As you can see here in North Africa, West Asia, Central Asia, and Northeast Asia has a quite high number of publications. Of course, 26 global papers and publications are about the dust source mapping with different procedures. I can say about 60% or to 70% of these publications going back to remote sensing techniques. Okay, go to the next slide, please. As you can see here, I have put 2 papers regarding dust source susceptibility mapping is very important issue. Before knowing where is the source, we must know which area is susceptible to produce dust. As you can see here in upper paper and in a down paper, both have using machine learning and data mining and satellite imagery to find the susceptibility of some area to produce dust. Please, next slide. And also here, two other papers that show us how we can use some sort of environmental modeling using the geoinformatics to identify and discriminate. It's very, very important issue. Discriminate which kind of dust, which mechanisms, and what are the main characteristics of them. It is two examples to knowing and discriminating different classes of dust sources. Please go to the next slide. And here I have shown two papers regarding the emission, how sources are emit dust using some numerical simulation and numerical modelings. One in South East Iran and another in the Tehran that have used some sort of numerical modeling. Next slide, please. And here, the final reference that I would like to emphasize more is using visual interpretation of satellite imagery as the most robust and the most precise method to know exactly where is the sources of dust. In this project, we identified about 10,000 sources of dust in the Tigris and Euphrates basin, and the geodatabase and the papers are available for everyone. Please go to the next one. And here, as you can see here, the results of our work that we believe after 10 years of working in dust source mapping, visual interpretation of multi-source satellite imagery is the most precise method for dust source identification and mapping. As you can see here in the west of Iran and in the east of Iran, we have about 20,000 dust events during last 20 years. And we used our experts to visually interpret and exactly find where is the source of dust emission. Please go. That's all. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it would be good now, because that was quite an intense presentation, I think. Can I
Just 5 minutes,
ask whether
yeah.
there are any questions at this stage, sort of technical clarification questions? Yeah, do we have a roving mic or something like that? Otherwise, you'll have to come up and ask or you can come up and ask the question, sir, as you like. Here we go. So, Professor, we've got a couple of questions from the floor. Please go.
Yes,
Can you introduce
thank you very
yourself
much.
as well, please,
My
sir?
name is Abror Gafurov from German Research Center for Geosciences. I'm doing a lot of water research, and in your slides, Professor, you showed two kind of sources, one anthropogenic and the other one was hydrological triggered source of dust storms. Can you please elaborate on this? What do you mean by hydrological dust storms?
Okay, actually, the hydrological sources of dust, going back to the areas that has been dried up, for example, the lakes, the marshes, the riverbeds, the seasonal riverbeds, etc., that in a time period, in a limited period of time, they have some limited amount of water, but in the rest of the year, the rest of the time, they don't have enough water. For example, the Tharthar Lake in Iraq is one of the most anthropogenic sources of dust in the Middle East. And sometimes it has a flooded area with no dust, but about 10 months, no water, and it is a very, very active sources of dust. When I'm talking about the hydrological sources of dust, I mean the areas that in a specific period of time have water, but in the rest of the year they don't have, and they create a lot of dust in marshes, in riverbeds, in lakes, etc.
Okay, so this is a seasonal question. In some months in the year, the water level may be very low, and the suns can
Exactly.
can lift up. Okay, good. My second question, if I have one more question. Technical question.
Go on.
You said remote sensing data. What kind of remote sensing data you usually use to detect sandstorm sources? Thank you.
Pardon me, I lost your question, sorry.
What type of remote sensing data do you use? Which sources of remote sensing data do you use? Yes? Professor, have we lost you? Hold. Okay, we're going to try and get the professor back on because we've not seen him yet, so we don't know if he's real. We're going to try and get the professor back on to make sure that we can see he's real. Hold that question. We'll come back to you. I'm going to give you the microphone later. Very good. I think now it's Professor Claudio Zucca. Yeah? Also
Yes.
online.
Good
Are you
morning.
online as-
Good evening.
Ah, do you have a camera, sir, so we can see who you are?
Yeah. And I can see you.
You can see us. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. I think you're going to talk us about source management, correct?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Who is going to share the presentation? You or myself?
Ah, we can see you. Fabulous. We will share from this end, sir.
Right.
Lovely. Thank you. Please go ahead.
So good morning, and thank you for inviting me to share my contribution in this meeting, this important meeting. Please, next slide. This presentation will ideally lead you through steps that could be considered to develop source mitigation strategies once the source areas are identified, starting from the recognition of the linkages between source areas and impact areas, and including the identification of the SDS drivers, the identification of specific mitigation measures for the different land use systems, and the planning of integrated interventions. Next slide, please. Linking the source areas to their respective impact areas is important and not always easy. Sometimes the sources are located nearby the impacted villages and cities, just in the surrounding farmland, like in the example shown in the picture to the left, down to the left. But in other cases, the impacted regions can be far away, hundreds of kilometers, as in the example in the middle from Argentina, or even in other countries, as in the example to the right from Southern Asia. So the society experiences, especially the impacts of SDS. So it is important to engage the people, especially in the impacted areas and cities, to let them know where the source areas are and why, and where the mitigation investment is needed. Next slide. The drivers of SDS are often anthropogenic and linked to land use and land degradation. A review based on over 100 scientific studies in which the SDS causes were indicated by the authors as anthropogenic showed that the drivers are contextual, they require local analysis and understanding, and that the SDS are more frequent in the drylands marked by unsustainable agropastoral farming or by degradation of vegetation in rangelands and semi-natural areas, or in natural areas like desert, disturbed by technological activities such as mining, industrial activities, sometimes military operations, and that a considerable percentage of anthropogenic source areas correspond to the beds of the shrinking water bodies and wetlands. Next one, please. From a technical point of view, the source mitigation can be achieved through well-known methods that can be grouped as method to reduce wind speed near the ground, to reduce soil erodibility by increasing, as an example, ground cover and reducing surface disturbance, or to reestablish the wetlands and the water bodies. However, in fact, these methods can be implemented in very different ways and combinations on the ground. And the challenge for the communities is to have technology packages that are affordable and sustainable. Next one, please. So it is very important to have examples of such technology packages, such sustainable land and water management packages that respond to the local community needs. These have high potential to mitigate both the wind erosion at source, so the generation at source, but also the off-site impacts. As an example, the WOCAT International SLM database, among other sources, is a major source of documented examples of these technologies. Next one, please. On the other end, finding options and examples is not very difficult because there are plenty of examples. The crucial aspect is to understand how to deploy these technologies in an integrated way in the real-world landscapes. As an example, the different stages of the interventions related to SDS that in this slide are summarized as prevention, reduction, and adaptation would require different solutions. Here you see some few examples taken from WOCAT and documented in Central Asia countries, in your countries. Next one, please. More complex is the efficient allocation of these solutions into the landscapes. The key question is what to do where. The landscape processes need to be understood to define intervention priorities and to optimize the intervention plan to increase effectiveness and reduce the cost. The sketch in the slide shows a major source, a drying up water body in the area B. It is a source also because upstream there are abandoned salinized fields that are under water erosion and feed dust and salts to the downstream water body in area B. So the interventions are urgent not only in area B but also in area A to rehabilitate or to vegetate the abandoned fields to keep the fine material in place. This is just an example. And finally, it is important to embed these strategies, these SDS mitigation strategies, into the overall land use planning processes that are ongoing in the affected regions, so to align the different measures and the different policies, and also to link as much as possible source mitigation interventions to the land degradation neutrality targets. And this is all for my contribution, and thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. Can I ask if there are any technical questions in the audience here for clarification on that one? Do we have some very valuable input in terms of where we're going to go next? I think it really gives us a good sense of direction. Thank you so much. Seems to be okay from the technical perspective. Did we have Professor Ali back on? Did we lose him?
Yeah, I'm here.
You're here?
Yeah.
Very good. Still can't see. Excellent. So I know that we're joined by some other colleagues as well, correct? So I'm hoping that Charles Kelly is online. So I want to open this up now and start a bit more of a, and I in the audience, we've got Marcus. Yeah, fantastic. And Vinay, yeah? So I've got a couple of questions to Marcus and Vinay and to Charles when he joins, but then I'd like, if we can, to sort of start opening this up to the audience and see where we're going to go with this. Marcus, can you tell us about the kind of the coordination and the cooperation elements of this? We know that it's not just something that can happen, a kind of government decision, we're going to ban sand and dust storms. So it obviously needs different sectors, as well as, I know that you're leading FAO is leading the UN coalition on sand and dust storms at the moment, correct? Can you tell us a little bit about those efforts and whether they would be helpful for the region? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me stand, allow me to stand here.
You can take that.
Yeah, let me come over here. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm very pleased to be here today to speak on behalf of Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Since 2015, the UN General Assembly has been adopting resolutions in combating sand and dust storms every year due to its potential impact on SDGs, because it may hinder the progress towards achieving them. And this actually triggered the formation of the UN Coalition on Combating Sand and Dust Storms in 2019. The UN Coalition to Combat Sand and Dust Storms was officially launched during the UNCCD COP28, committing to harness international cooperation to support countries to combat sand and dust storms. Led by FAO since July 2020, this coalition, consisting of 19 UN and non-UN organizations, aims to promote and coordinate a collaborative UN system response to sand and dust storms on local, regional, and global scales, ensuring that unified and coherent actions are undertaken. We have like 5 working groups, and the first one is on adaptation and mitigation, led by UNDP and FAO. The second one, forecasting and early warning, led by World Meteorological Organization. The third, health and safety by WHO. The fourth, policy and governance by UNCCD. And the fifth one, mediation and regional collaboration by SCAP and SCOA. As you can see, I mean, this is a widespread thing, and its impact can be very transboundary. It's in its nature. And this emphasizes that there is a critical need for countries to collaborate globally, regionally, and also nationally through knowledge exchange, data, best practices to promote and coherent actions on sand and dust storms. I think without really taking much of your time, by the way, this year, the July 12th has been declared as International Day of Combating Sand and Dust Storms. And due to the scale of this problem, FAO has initiated Interregional Technical Cooperation Program financed by FAO. And this program has brought together many countries. And by this, we have been able to produce 3 reports. One of them was the sand and a guideline or a guide to mitigate to mitigation, adaptation, policy, and risk management measures in agriculture. This is a very important report, and the major thing here is like we have to put resources, like resource mobilization at international level is very important. At national level as well, countries have to commit, and it's very important so that we have sustainable land and water management practices and sharing all different experiences. Let me stop here. Thank you.
All right, so we're getting some good inputs here, aren't we? I'm going to take the hat. I hadn't realized that's Uchang signed us up for that, isn't it? We've been signed up for policy and governance, which I forgot that we agreed to do. So I'm going to take the hat of policy and governance and put it on now and say, from what I heard there, and Ludmila suggested that there was the workshop in March. So as policy and governance, I'm going to suggest to our colleagues at FAO that the 19 agencies that have signed up need to be there. Okay, all of them. Can we pass that message on? March, definitely. Policy and governance. Thank you. And that actually, that's quite a nice deadline, July 12th. So can we imagine that we've got an idea by July the 12th for Central Asia? So we'll have the workshop. How fast do we think we can push forward an idea from March into something that sounds like a plan? How about that? Right. So, I mean, for me, that's our kind of, as a sort of timeline for us, for the GM, we're a resource mobilization group, not a policy and governance bit. I was just stealing the hat. But if we're looking for program development, then that timing starts to look quite nice. That the March workshop provides the input. We've kind of do something in July to mark Sand and Dust Storms Day, because I bet no other region's got organized yet. So let's try and be the region that's ahead of the game in terms of being organized, with a vision to COP16 at the end of next year. Vinay, would you like to come and talk to us? I understand that you've also got a really good case study on successful source mitigation, yeah? Can you come and talk that through? Would you like to come here? Fantastic. Thank you. You were chatting.
So I'm pleasantly surprised to run into so many old friends here. We have a colleague here who has worked for ICARDA in Aleppo. We have Ludmila, I have worked with her in Kazakhstan. Claudio was my colleague at ICARDA, and we shared office for several years. Firaz Ziyadat and I shared office for almost 7-8 years in Amman. And so, yeah, several close friends I'm running into today, and totally unexpected. I had decided to share some different examples, but having seen Ludmila, I remembered one that I think is quite closely related with the topic today. So in Kazakhstan, with help of Karak, we had started a study on valuation of ecosystem services and see if we can save some water and try reviving the Aral Sea. Yeah, so usually because agriculture takes majority of the water, even if you save a little bit of water in agriculture, large volumes can become available for other ecosystems. So we tried to see if water is saved from agriculture, but it's not helping the farmer increase his productivity, who should pay the bill? Yep, so if the water is being used by industry, by municipalities, by whoever, should foot the bill. So we try to see if a farmer is told to go from surface irrigation to sprinklers or drips, there's a cost associated with that, say $2,000, $3,000 per hectare. So that's the cost the farmer has to bear to adopt that technology. With subsidies also, it's quite big number. There are only a few $100s that you get in subsidies. So we tried to have this connection using SWOT hydrologic model that we partnered with Texas A&M to understand the hydrology. When the water leaves the Chardara Dam, how does it move through the landscape before it reaches the Aral Sea? And then using a model from Stanford University called the RIOS model, Resource Investment Optimization model, which says, if you have an X amount of money and you know what's the parameter you're trying to optimize, in our case was to maximize the water saving. So it tells you where to invest that money. So we tried to couple the SWOT model with RIO's model, and we also had University of Minnesota partner with us. And we tried to make an investment plan saying that if you have $100 million to invest in this Aral Sirdarya River Basin, how would you go about spending this money? You give some money to the cotton farmer, you give some money to the horticulture sector, you give some money to some of the other land users, and then they use it for making certain changes such that the ecosystem services associated with their agricultural practices are improved. More water becomes available. So I think for $100 million, we had 230 million cubic meters of water that could be saved from agriculture sector that could be diverted to the Aral Sea and prevent land degradation. So typically ICARDA's work is about sustainable land management and how that can have a trickle effect and prevent degradation of land resources. The other example I wanted to cite was the work we are doing in Uzbekistan. So we worked with SICK ICWC, if some of you are familiar with that, in Uzbekistan, in Tashkent. So we worked in the Fargana Valley and in the Urgench part of the country. And what we tried to do was, so the farmers typically over irrigate. The yields are quite high, but they apply too much water. So what we tried to do was install some weather stations, and using the weather station data, we calculate the crop evapotranspiration on daily basis. So at midnight, the data is sent to the Water User Association irrigation manager, and he knows which farmer lost how much water to evapotranspiration on a daily basis. and he can have the water balance being solved on a daily time step. Was there irrigation given? Was there rainfall? If not, all the water was lost to evapotranspiration. And he has a spreadsheet right in front of him to say which farmer will need how much water in next few days, and he releases exact right amount to the farmer, not too much, not too little, to meet exactly the crop water demand. And that way we have seen that we could increase the crop yields by 30%, and we could save 50% of the water and increase water productivity. So that was something we tried to do in Uzbekistan to save water and make it available for environment. The final example I want to give is the work we are doing at present in Tajikistan in partnership with Caritas Switzerland. So here also we have a network of weather stations which are connected to a smartphone application that tell the farmer when it's time to irrigate, how much you irrigate for growing potato crops. So in Uzbekistan, we tried cotton and wheat, and here we tried with potatoes. We are also trying in Tajikistan to promote crop diversification. So typically you have wheat followed by cotton across the whole region because it's important for the economy, but it's not good for the environment. So we are trying to promote food legumes, mung bean, chickpea, and others so that you can have biological nitrogen fixation. It's good for soil health. And at the same time, you have a crop cover on the ground all the time. You don't have bare soil exposed to wind erosion and other stresses. So that's the third thing that we are trying to do in Uzbekistan. So all of them are such that they are trying to promote farmer income, at the same time trying to do it in a way that it has a low environmental footprint, and it's good for the environment, good for the farmer, and it's good for all. So it's a win-win-win in that sense. So I just wanted to share these three examples with you. One last example that's coming to my mind is in Uzbekistan, usually the government sets a target for the farmer, how much yield you have to produce based on where you're situated. Yeah. And if you don't do it, you have penalized. If you do and you exceed, you are rewarded. So if you have 3 years in a row that you exceed the given target, you get a car or some reward of some kind. So typically the farmer is given a random target irrespective of his land suitability or land capability. So what we try to do was look at the weather, look at the soil, and tell you how much is the potential yield for that farmer's field. How much is the maximum he can go to versus what's the target being given. If the gap is big, that means there is very little risk that he may miss the target. If the gap is big, that means there is little risk. If he's already very close to the potential yield and the rainfall is quite low that year, it's quite certain the risk is high and he will fail to meet the target. So when you're talking to the insurance companies and they want to charge a premium, instead of charging a blanket premium to all the farmers, we try to provide this tool where you are doing the premium charging based on the risk associated with not being able to meet the target given by the government. So that's another way we try to help these farmers and say, please don't give them unrealistic targets and tell them to do things that are not sustainable in the long run. So these are the examples I wanted to share with you, which have indirect effects on how to prevent sand and dust storms in this region by maintaining healthy soils and water resources. Thank you.
So that's the inputs. Okay, we've heard, I think, from a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives on this. I hear it's doable, but the challenge is big. I hear that the science, we know what the science should be, but we haven't got as much of it as we need to be able to make the decisions, yeah? And that there are practical things that we can do once we know the science that will make a difference to people's lives, is what I heard. What did you hear? Can I open actually, I'd like to open the floor now specifically to people from the region. Does that make sense to you, what you've heard? Is this something that resonates with you? Is this something that you think that we can drive forward? What are your observations in the first instance to what we've heard so far? Please. I think where did it go? It was there? I may have stolen it.
First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers, especially those who were unable to join us on offline. Thank you so much for your inputs. They were extremely helpful. But I want to pose a question from the perspective of a policymaker. We've heard the science, yes. We've heard some of the really interesting case studies. Извините, можно потише, да, там сзади, пожалуйста? Девушка, можно потише? У нас здесь дискуссия идет. So, as a policymaker, I wanted to ask, what do you scientists, what would you recommend, or rather, what are the key barriers from implementing what the science says and turning it into effective policy? For instance, our last speaker shared some experiences in launching some of the pilot projects. So what has really prevented this from being scaled up? And in the same manner, we saw from our respective professors all this research that has been published. So what are the key barriers that really sort of prevent science to become an effective policy? Thank you.
Very good. So would any of our speakers, either Professor Ali or Professor Claudio, or in the room, I'm going to give it online first to see if they would like to come back. And if there are any participants online who've got questions as well, can you please, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to give you the floor, but can you flag that you want the floor or put your question in the chat? Thank you.
Hi.
Claudio, are you?
May I?
Please. Is that Charles? Who's that?
Sorry, I just don't
Claudio,
see how
perfect.
to raise the hand. Sorry, I was
Perfect.
just trying to raise my hand, but I cannot see. But I can speak after Ali, of course.
Yep.
No, please.
It's your turn. I will talk after
No,
you.
please go, Ali. Please.
Oh, you people are so
Okay.
nice. You said it was like a family, right? Okay, good. You're so lovely.
Thank you. Actually, I want to give you an example about my experiences, because I have been working for FAO for 4 years regarding sand and dust storm in West Asia. Let's say a practical procedure is definitely required to be successful. Let's say, just let me to number them. First, we need to find the sources, exact sources. And second, we need to analyze the drivers of dust emission. Which mechanisms is controlling dust emission is very, very important and critical point. And in the next step, impact analysis. I mean, which area is the most impacted? For example, agriculture from the perspective of FAO, or people, or infrastructure. Different impacts in different regions can be modeled. And in the next step, based on my experience with FAO, contingency planning and disaster risk reduction and source mitigation all can come together based on the vulnerability mapping that can be done in the study area in some regions. As an example, we already have done in southeast of Iran, southwest of Iran, as an example. It is a procedure that has been followed in Iran, in West Asia, based on the FAO, UNCCD, etc. And also at the same time in Northeast Asia, there is a collaboration between 4 countries, China, Mongolia, Japan, and South Korea. They come together and they have developed a master plan to combat the dust sources in Mongolia and China.
They are good stories, very good Professor Ali.
Yeah.
Professor Ali, are there good stories from there? So it is possible to scale up the science from those regions?
Yes, of course. In the southwest of Iran, FAO already has implemented a project named Contingency Planning for Combating Sand and Dust Storm with a perspective of agriculture. It is already done in the southwest of Iran, in Ahvaz, and in 2 other cities. I was the consultant of FAO to create this contingency plan and disaster risk reduction. Can be shared with experts in Central Asia as well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudio. It's your turn.
Yes. Quickly, I want to add 2 things. One is that there is a lot of recent work by the UNCCD together with the other member institution of the coalition on SDS, and a compendium has been published, and the UNCCD is working to the establishment of of an SDS toolbox, and I think that this institution. So I am also from my side technically contributing to the design of the toolbox, but I think that besides the technical aspect, these institutions engaged in the coalition should maybe make an effort to develop some policy guidelines to support the policy design by the affected countries. This is my recommendation. Regarding the scientific side, I can confirm that there is a lot of research about source mapping, and there is a relatively little research on the impacts and benefits obtained by the restoration project to reduce SDS. I think we need more evidence about the capacity of our solutions to really reduce SDS. And yes, that I think is a need.
I just wanted to add that this is something similar to climate change, where if you can connect the people who are causing and the people who are suffering, then you can have a negotiation, a dialogue, a willingness to pay, because somebody has to foot the bill. And it's usually the smallholder farmer who's unable to adopt the technologies, the solutions, the practices to prevent this from happening. But who foots the bill? I think the science has made enough advancements to identify hotspots, identify interventions, but for it to translate into action at scale and policy, somebody has to foot the bill. I think that's where there is need for efforts to generate enough resources to make these changes, the best management practices needed in the smallholder farmers' fields to maintain the land cover. Somebody has to go and do that, the labor associated. It need not be money. It could be just people willing to volunteer their time to plant some trees, some land cover. It need not be monetary. It could be something just voluntary. But I think that's where the effort is needed to bring it to scale.
Okay, thank you very much. It was really very interesting discussion. As we always say that the devil is in the details. We can argue on major things here, but how can those things be implemented at country level it requires commitment. And if we go back back in time since Copenhagen, we have agreed that every year $100 billion will be allocated to combat to really slow down the climate change. How many billions have been collected so far? We have to be very serious now. We have to be very serious in making things happen. Countries have done now really, this is a really great example that the countries can come together, can agree on something, but there has to be like commitment at national level. I remember African nations came together in maybe it was in Maputo. From now onwards, we allocate 10% of our GDP to agriculture. Only few countries have allocated that amount after 10 years. And those countries that have actually allocated 10% of their GDP for agriculture, they actually progressed. Changes have been very visible. Therefore, we have to be serious. Policymakers have to be serious. And also, it's always like boils down to how we can integrate this into our national programs, because it's a part of disaster. And under the disaster risk reduction, many countries have like national crisis management. This has to be part of their program, and certain amount of resource should be allocated at national level. We should not expect resource to come from anywhere. This is what I really think. Thank you.
Thank you. I tend to agree with that, actually, that at least in our experience on resource mobilization, coming to you in a minute, Ludmila, most of the resources actually do come from national sources, even with all the big funds out there. So there is also an argument to be said, and I'm going to be controversial now. We spend, and I'm not, you're going to correct me on the number, but it's something insane, like $700 billion on agricultural subsidies every year. So I'm not suggesting we take them away from agricultural subsidies, but from a policy perspective, we could be subsidizing different types of activities without touching a penny, actually, and redirecting those to different things. Coming back, Ludmila, please.
I just wanted to add about the need to institutionalize knowledge products in Central Asia. So, for example, producing maps of sources. Local institutions in Central Asian countries, they must be involved in the process of mapping, and they must then receive this soft knowledge how to use it in order further after the project completion they could also use this program in order to do again and again and provide enough information, enough knowledge to policy decision making. And more institutions, our educational institutions, they should have this this knowledge to give it to students, because students is a new workers in our ministries, in scientific also institutions and whatever. So this institutionalization of knowledge in existed institutions. Yep.
Thank you. So it's a catch-all term, capacity building, but it's for decision support, yeah? That we, not one time, it's an ongoing process, a system of decision support. Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. As I said in the beginning, I'm doing water science, water research, and this is something new for me. I come from Central Asia, from Uzbekistan, and I was also observing this improved frequency of dust storms in the last years. And I was asking all the time myself, I'm also active in the field of disaster risk reduction, but that's more in flood and in avalanche hazard, landslide, etc. But dust storm is also hazard, it's also disaster. My question was, I think I got the answer from the slide of Professor Ali's to my question. Namely, if the climate change is a main driver of improved frequency of dust storms. I think it is, because there was like a number of publications and people started to work on this. I think for like 40, 50 years, it was way less dust storms observed anywhere in the world. But now my question is, when we do disaster risk reduction, let's say flood forecasting, flood type of disaster risk reduction, we do have preventive measures. When we forecast, we say, okay, we need to build dikes because flood will come. We need to evacuate population because flood will come. We want to kind of make anything else possible to least harm people who are living in this area. How is this in dust hazard? How do you, what kind of preventive measures do you have?
Thank you, very good question. I'm going to hand back to Claudio on this one. I think, can you go through what you would propose on that, Claudio? I think that was the WOCAT slide, was at least part of that, but do you want to reflect?
No, well, I think, well, I appreciate the comments. I think I don't have additional reflections on this.
Okay.
May I add a point regarding this comment?
Please.
Actually, if I will share with you the FAO report regarding how we can mitigate in the impact area. For example, people that has been exposed to sand and dust storm, you cannot evacuate them. But there are some protocols for air pollution protocols, for animal protocols, for agriculture protocols that can protect them. And in our project with FAO, we have nominated some actions regarding how to mitigate the impact areas, specifically for rural areas. But I have another point regarding this comment, previous comment, sorry, that how we can put this into action, or how we can convince the politicians to do something. Based on my experience in southwest of Iran, the best way is put the impacts and damage of sand and dust storm into the language of dollar, into the language of money. It is the best way. 10 years of experience working in sand and dust storm said, from my side, if you express that how much it will cost, how much is lost from the animal, from the population, from the infrastructure, etc. After that, the politician may be encouraged to do something. It is based on my experience.
I think that's a very good point. The economics of sand and dust storms, the economic losses and the economic benefits, so economic consequences of ignoring it and the economic benefits of doing something about it, sounds like a very interesting thing for March, for the agenda, to see whether that's something that we want to think about. I also saw a message from Uchang. Uchang, I'm paying attention, I promise, that I'm to direct you to the compendium as well. And there's lots of information in the Sand and Dust Storm compendium that we can share with you at the outcome of this meeting. Any more questions in the room? Do we have any questions online? Is anybody put any questions in the chat or wants to take the floor? Have we? They haven't said anything. 22 participants online. Okay, is there anybody from the 19? Because we're kind of wrapping up here. If there's anybody from the 19 who wants to say anything. There's a chat there, isn't there? Is there anything interesting in the chat? Okay, so online, thank you very much. But I'm going once, going twice. Raise your hand, say something. And otherwise, thank you very much. I think for us, that was a fabulously informative session. I think it's given us lots to think about, right? Hugely wonderful inputs from all of our speakers, online and here in the room. We're at a really exciting point. The political will is there. The 5 countries want to do something together. We have a timeline, I think, that works and makes sense. So from our side, 100% support. We look forward to supporting the event in March and going forward from there with developing something that is going to transform the situation of sand and dust storms in Central Asia. Have I missed anything? No? But I think, yeah, a round of applause for everybody who's online and everybody who's been here. Thank you so much. And make sure that you've, I don't know, signed something, or we know who you are, so that we can make sure that you're involved in this process going forward. I think for me, that would be one takeaway. It's lovely that you've all seen your friends, but we need to go out and find other allies. Yeah, we need to go to other sectors. We need the agriculture ministries and the finance ministries, and we need a multi-sector approach to this. So nobody walks away. You can have a croissant or something on your way out, but that's the only free thing you get. That's the only part of the free lunch. We now work on sand and dust storms together in Central Asia. Thank you so much. It's going to be a fun journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chang. Good job.
Thank you, Ali.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye,
Thank you,
Uchang.
Have a nice
Claudio.
day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day there.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.